Good morning. Today is Thursday, April 23rd. And now, as we do each morning, please rise as you are able, remove your hat, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Today's announcements are pretty short. Just a reminder that Term 4 will start on May 4th. So please continue on with enrichment until then, until you're ready for learning. And we will have more information on how that works soon. I know there are lots of questions. There are also lots of details for us to work out. Today's poem will be Foxes on the Trampoline by Charlotte Boulay, read by English teacher Mr. Richardson. Have a wonderful day and stay safe out there.
All right, good evening, everyone. The poem that I chose for today, and I'm definitely going to come back to this poet, is it's called "Foxes on the Trampoline," taken from the book "Foxes on the Trampoline" by Charlotte Boulay. Charlotte is a friend of my wife's, and they went to high school together, and they've kept in touch ever since then. And Charlotte's a very talented writer. She's got wonderful range. Everything from whimsy to kind of deeper meditations. I find her poems to be quite lyrical, and even when the poems hit hard, I find them to be very comforting. Among other things, right? There's a lot to say about her poetry, but this particular poem, especially on a gloomy day today, that's why I actually thought about it. I will preface everything that I ever say with the idea that this is just my take on the poem. This is not the professional take. This is not necessarily the academic take. And I apologize if my take is incorrect or somehow offensive to the original poet. I've never actually talked to her about this particular poem, but at some point, hopefully, I can. So this poem strikes me as a very kind of like whimsical poem. What's funny about the title is, so I went looking for the title of, like a copy of the poem so that I could just copy and paste the poem into the poem of the day document without having to retype it. But it looks like I'm going to have to retype it because every time I typed in "Foxes on the Trampoline," a YouTube video or several YouTube videos came up of foxes on a trampoline, which is definitely worth watching at some point. It's pretty funny. But anyway, the whimsy of say like that video is exactly what she captures in this poem. But as with any really good poem, there is, there's some pretty rich imagery, and there's some whimsy, but there's something else as well. And I really appreciate the way that this poem lands, especially the last two stanzas. And maybe I can just kind of speak about that at the end. But it's just wonderful. It's light on the heart. If you want it to be light on the heart, if you want to dive a little bit deeper, I think she creates some space in the poem for you to do that. So here it goes. Foxes on the Trampoline by Charlotte Boulay. Mostly, I want to look out the window before anyone has risen and see them. Slim red bodies at first hesitant, then long spines twisting with delight, to find the ground so suddenly springy. One jumps and the other bounces, and their silky fur flies. They look too skinny. They need to steal a chicken, or perhaps I could put out some milk and bread. No. What is this, some kind of story? Sometimes you ask, do you want something that is not available to you right now? Next door, a man coughs and coughs. A tremor runs through me. I would never tell them I am watching them pretend to fly. Trespassers, all of us, of this easy, weightless secret. What I want is folded up somewhere, or buried, or slipped under the sea. I have everything else. Everything. Everything. Oh, fox, is this joy? And that's it. One of the things that kind of occurs to me, or one of the things that I think that I struggled with in poems both when I was younger, or when I first started reading poems, or even when I first started teaching poems, both for myself and like my comprehension of the poem, but also in actually trying to explain things to some of the students, is that oftentimes in a poem, much like with us, a poet goes in and out of thought, right? It's so just imagine, you sitting, staring out a window, thinking. Think of all the different places you go when you're staring out that window. You go one place, and then you tack hard to another place, and then you come back to the first place, and then maybe you take off to another place entirely. And I think what may be confusing about poetry sometimes is that happens all the time in poetry. Someone is sitting and watching something. Maybe she actually witnessed the foxes on the trampoline, or at least she's imagining that. And that thought alone, or that image alone, brings her to another place, right? It brings her to this other. So someone, I'll just assume that it is Charlotte, is speaking, but then there's someone else who's speaking in the poem, say in the, third to last stanza. Sometimes you ask, do you want something that is not available to you right now? I assume that's someone else asking her that, and she's thinking about, maybe she looks like she's thinking about something else. She's thinking about something else that she wants, or that's what the person believes that she's thinking about. And then there's this man coughing and coughing next door, and a tremor runs through her. That's just, the way that I interpret that is that just actually happens in the process of thinking about or observing these foxes. And so while it may seem really weird and abstract in the maybe the structure of the poem on first glance, it works perfectly, because that's how our mind thinks. That's in fact how our conversations often work, right? You start talking about something, you tack in a different direction, then you come back to the original subject, or maybe you abandon it altogether. Speeches work like this as well, right? Great speechwriters, great orators, they begin in a place and they always come back to that place. They circle back to that place, to that central image or the central idea, or something like this. But anyway, so at the end of the poem, we're still there with the fox in the last stanza, right? But we're also someplace else. We've now moved on to kind of a meditation of everything that a person wants. What I want is folded up somewhere, or buried, or slipped under the sea, and those are places that take work to expose, or to discover, right? You only find things under the sea if you go looking for them, generally speaking. You only find things that are buried if you go digging for them, and the things that are folded up and tucked away, maybe in a junk drawer or something like that, you need to go and find them. But she kind of rounds things out by saying, I have everything else, right? Everything else, which is a very satisfying, like when does anyone ever say that? When does anyone ever make a comment about experiencing that level of satisfaction? And then in the very last line of the poem, kind of like praising the fox for bringing about this thought. Again, that's just my read on it. Maybe it's the complete opposite of what I just said, but I like to think about it like that, because it does feel very whimsical to me, and it does bring me a great deal of joy and peace, just kind of reading the poem. And so I appreciate Charlotte writing it. Anyway, that is it for tonight. Relatively brief. I will see you all back here hopefully tomorrow. Have a good night.